As blacksmiths, we seem to love scrounging and salvaging materials and making things out of the materials that we scrounged. Things like coil springs and sucker rod and hay rake tines all have some outstanding steel in them. But there's a problem with using that stuff. One, it's somewhat of an unknown. We theorize a lot that coil springs 5160 or something like it, but these days every auto manufacturer has a different formula, and they all might heat treat just a little bit differently, and they might be somewhat unpredictable. Hay rake tines are typically 1095, but I've known some people that have had some air hardening hay rake tines. So if you treat it like 1095, you're going to be in trouble. Sucker rod comes in all sorts of varieties. Now the advantage to sucker rod is that it isn't stressed real highly in use, and there's a number quite frequently stamped on the side of the coupling, although on this one I can't read it because it's so worn out. But if you can find that number, there are charts available online to look up the number, and you can find out exactly what kind of steel it is, and then look up the steel and see how you should harden and temper it. So sucker rod at least has that advantage going for it, that it's not a total unknown, and if you can find the numbers, you can do your research. Why am I bringing this up? Well, there's a downside to using salvaged steel, and that is failure. And I'm going to show you exactly what failure looks like. This tool is an adze, kind of like an axe, except the blade is 90 degrees to what an axe would be. And it's one made out of a salvaged steel. And it was going to be a good usable tool. I have several hours worth of work into it. But if we can get the camera to focus on the edge, and it sure doesn't want to. Well, I guess you're just going to have to take my word for it, because the camera doesn't seem to want to focus in on this shiny surface. But there are 1, 2, 3 little hairline cracks. The furthest one comes back almost 3/4 of an inch on this adze blade. What I have is a custom ordered tool that somebody paid good money for, that I have completely wasted many hours of shop time making. This is now scrap. Or I can cut it off and I can make a completely different tool out of it, but I don't know if it's worth it because it may fail a second time during the heat treat. I had tested the material. It's this stuff. It's some sort of a agricultural monster of a rake tine of some sort, or a spring, and it doesn't get very hard in oil, hardened outstandingly well in water, and my test forging did not break when I tried to stress it. But this one cracked, and I think I did everything the same. Maybe I didn't. There may have been some odd difference there. But that's one of the risks of junkyard steels, is that things happen that you can't anticipate because you don't know exactly what you're working with. If I had brought it up 50 degrees cooler, might it have worked? I don't know. Had I done who knows what different, it might have worked. But the fact is that it failed, and I've got to start over, and I am out, for me, hundreds of dollars of shop time. Now, it depends on what your time is worth and what it costs for you to operate your business if you're in business. But time is money, and ruining a tool because I was trying to be frugal and use salvaged material has proven to be a big problem for me. If I had spent $20 on a piece of material just to make this adze out of, I would have a finished tool. It would be ready to ship tomorrow after I put the handle on it, and the customer would be happy and I would be happy. But instead I got to start over, and with all of the steps of annealing and letting it sit and getting around to this and that, I'm another week out getting this tool out the door probably. So that's the risk of using junkyard steels. Now I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to keep making little punches and chisels out of coil spring. I'm going to keep making strikers and things like that out of the hay rake tine, and I'm going to have some failures, and I'm just going to have to deal with it. But for big tools like this, that customers are paying big money for, there's a real false economy in trying to use salvage steels. So think about it when you make that decision. Is it worth having to make something 2 or 3 times to save a couple of dollars on materials? Now this would be $20 worth of tool steel probably, and it would be a lot of work to forge out of something like 01. But it would be a known quality, and I'd only have to do it 1 time. It was still a lot of work to forge out of whatever this is, and I have no idea what this is, and I know even less now since this failed. The second go-round of this adze is starting off like this, and this is out of mild steel, and I will forge weld a 5160 edge on it. I will know exactly what it is, exactly how it should behave, and it's going to be a much better tool, and it's what I should have done to start with. So that's my confession of trying to save a few bucks or trying to save the effort in forge welding, and it failed on me miserably, so it's back to the forge, do it right. You know what they say, if you don't have time to do it right the first time, you sure don't have time to do it over, and that's a lesson hard learned sometimes. So be careful using junkyard steels. We're all going to do it, I know that, but that's your fair warning, that's the disclaimer. If you do it, sooner or later, you're going to be disappointed by it. So, hope you liked that. Hope that was valuable. Get out to the shop, make something, stay safe, wear your safety glasses, and we will see you for the next one.